The brothers Wisp. The brothers Wisp, brothers Wisp. The brothers Wisp. The brothers.
Hey everybody, this is Greg with the Brothers Wisp, number 112. I am actually fairly hyped. I ate my Wheaties, had a couple of Pop-Tarts, frosted, strawberry or cherry. They taste all the same to me, both delicious. My children refuse to admit that they are virtually indistinguishable, even though one is pink and one is white. That's neither here nor there. Today we have a lovely quadrant of people. There's 4 folks on the call. I am very excited. I don't know. It just gets me a little bit extra hype when we get a bigger crowd to work with. It's because my jokes don't fall as flat because you guys give me better pity laughs. So today we have Thomas Kurnek from Slovakia.
Hello.
We've got Andrew Cox all the way from... You're in Melbourne now, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't say it right. It's Melbourne, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Just drop most of the vowels.
All right, and then we've got T-Cent all the way in Chicagoland. Not Chicagoland, I'm sorry. Colorado land.
Correctamundo.
I'm looking at it. That looks like a volcano behind you.
I think it's Mount St. Helen. It might have been.
Okay.
A little special place in my heart.
All right. That represents the slow build of rage and fury inside of him before he erupts. I like that.
Yeah.
Mikey, all the way from Chicagoland. That's the guy from Chicago. Excellent. So let's hurry up and get the vegetables out of the way so we can get to our dessert. So this podcast is brought to you by Sonar, a scalable, intuitive, and comprehensive ISP billing and operational support system. Drop over to sonar.software and check it out. Those guys are going strong. Bug them about version 2, right? 2.0 is now what everybody loves to crack wise about. Give them some ribbing. They will be happy to talk to you about it, and then hopefully we'll see it soon, and you guys will be rocking and rolling. Thanks, Andrew Thrift, for popping up in front of us. There's some interesting information. Moving on, second sponsor is Cambium. Cambium is running an ePMP bundle. It's the same bundle we've been talking about. I'll add the links in there again. Price discount, $6,000 value down to $19.95. I love that. Makes it sound like I'm hawking mattresses or something. $19.95. We also, with that one, get 6 months of automated billing via WISP, RF Elements twist horns, 2 hours one-on-one ePMP network engineering. And again, that engineering conversation is no sales pitch. You just get to chat with the folks, ask them the questions. CN Heat Trial, which Mikey is fabulously excited about, but too cheap to ever attempt. Pop over to Cambium. Give them a shout out. Say we love the Brothers Wisp, and thank you guys for sponsoring the podcast. All right, you guys ready to rock and roll?
But wait, there's more.
Oh no, there's more.
We have 2 of the big money dealing with and customer management systems out there. Who are we missing that we need to get on here advertising?
WISP and Sonar. Yeah,
we have them both now.
Power Code and Azatel. I guess the only other.
You're forgetting one major player, the Ubiquity Payment Gateway that just got announced.
Yeah.
There's also Splinks, which somebody was real sweet talking in Slack the other day.
I think Justin Wilson's a big proponent of Splinks as well. I think he likes that stuff. I have not used it yet, though. But while we're talking about the Ubiquity Payment Gateway, that just got announced. Mike, I think you've probably read the marketing stuff a little bit more than anybody else. What's the dealio on that?
Well, so it appears to be more Ubiquity ADD. They can't get one project completed ever, and so let's make another one. This one is central to your business operation in that they are now competing with IPPay, PayPal, ProPay, so on, in being your payment gateway.
Super important. Something you really don't want to mess up.
So this plugs into their what is it, like UCRM or something? What's it called?
Yes, UCRM. I'm not certain, but I believe only the cloud version of UCRM. I guess there's a local version available, and doesn't sound like it's available there, at least not yet. they're talking about a pretty aggressive 1.9% plus 30 cents per transaction fee for the first year. No details on what it's like after that. So I guess if you're inclined to try it, you know what you got for a year. If the product lasts that long.
I was always boggled why Ubiquiti doesn't put a lot of time and energy into, really fleshing out the UCRM and making it just like the platform. So if you're using Ubiquiti stuff, it's a no-brainer. You use the UCRM, you've got the payment gateway, you tie all that stuff together. Why do you think it is they're just now starting to kind of dip their toe in the water?
Well, I would be surprised, based solely on information in this blog post, that UCRM would be a viable platform in 5 years. Because they just now added automatic payments.
Did they not have payments through a different payment gateway before?
They had other payment gateways, but you had to log in every month to do the payment manually, from what I'm told. It wouldn't just automatically charge you on the first or on your anniversary day. You'd have to go in and manually click pay my bill every month. To me, that seems like if you're making a billing system, what's more central to a billing system than automatically billing the customer?
That the money comes through.
Yeah.
That seems pretty critical.
As everyone on the call knows,
Which is what they're trying to break now.
Yeah, I was going to say, as everyone on the call knows, owning and operating a software company is super easy. Right, Thomas?
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
of course. Especially when you have to deal with PCI compliance because you are storing credit card numbers, right?
Just slap that stuff in there, no worries.
Chuck some GDPR to make it a bit more difficult as well.
Yeah.
Nah, that's why they're only doing it in the U.S. right now on the payment gateway. I think they're starting small, keeping it local, keeping it easy.
I was talking to somebody else the other day about this very topic, and it was, it was pretty much what we're talking about here. Is just the sheer how slowly they go at releasing these things, despite having more resources than perhaps the entire rest of the industry combined. I know you can't just double the number of programmers and get double the output. I know it doesn't work that way. But, for someone like the size of Ubiquiti, throwing $1 million at some developers, especially since they're not in Silicon Valley anymore, seems like that'd go a long way.
And so actually,
where's the work?
If we are talking about scaling and doubling developers versus doubling output, it depends, because if your management is good enough, and if those developers are not bottlenecking themselves on the same project, if we are talking about, you are releasing new features for 5 separate software suites, which Ubiquiti has much more than 5 at this point, you can actually double your output with double the developers, if they aren't bottlenecking themselves and if they are managed properly, which Ubiquiti should be able to handle those, right? It's at a corporation of their size, management should not be an issue, proper processes should not be an issue, and if you have the money and if you have enough projects to not bottleneck each other, then they should be able to hire more developers and increase their throughput in all their, across their portfolio. Of course, it won't make a single software be developed twice as fast. That's not possible. But with the exhaustive software portfolio that they have, it's a different scale.
It sounds like a common woe. It almost sounds like the exact same conversation we've had about Mikrotik putting out features, right?
Yeah.
So everybody's got software problems these days.
The thing is I feel like there's going to be even though everybody feels really good about casting shade at anything Ubiquiti does, particularly this. I think that there's going to be a ton of people who still use it, because you have the Ubiquiti fanboys. They're their own group, but you're gonna have the guy who is just wanting to. He doesn't know tech. He doesn't know networking very well. He just wants to start getting internet and get internet for himself and a couple of his neighbors. And that guy is gonna look at the Ubiquiti ecosystem and be like, I can just buy this one thing, and I have all these other things that connect right together, and I don't have to, meet with 20 different companies and figure out how to get them all to play nice together. That's a killer feature to have, and be able to say, boom, done. I don't have to deal with this. I can just focus on doing installs.
For sure. I think we've talked about before the UCRM, and I guess now this payment gateway option really seems like it targets a brand new WISP, right? Just trying to get off the ground. And as we've all met people who have Ubiquiti networks, sometimes they make it too easy to get up and running a WISP, right? Because you can get into trouble after a while because they make it so simple.
And I'm going to argue that running their own payment gateway is not actually good, even for this use case. There is nothing preventing you having very simple billing and automated billing and all of that with an external payment gateway. You can do all of these using any other payment gateway there is. You don't have to create your own payment gateway, right? The issue with this is we know what product lifecycle and product abandonment rates are at Ubiquiti.
MFI Cloud.
Gateway, yeah, well, we could list a very long list here.
Yeah, for sure.
But the point is, a payment gateway is something entirely else. You will be vaulting payment methods. You will be vaulting credit cards through this. If Ubiquiti decides to can this as a product, completely kill it, that means all of your vaulted payment methods now either go away, or you have to do a PCI compliant request to retrieve the clear text credit card data from Ubiquiti and migrate them to another payment gateway, which means you will be responsible for PCI compliance. And good luck to any guy that just wanted to start providing internet being PCI compliant, right? There is no way.
No.
So this is a very serious and very potentially business killing decision if Ubiquiti abandons this product and there is thousands upon thousands of payment methods vaulted in their payment gateway which people are using to pay the internet with.
Yeah.
This is not funny. This can kill your business if this happens.
That said, I think this is how Ubiquiti gets reoccurring revenue out of their products, because the Ubiquiti people would riot en masse. I would never use a Ubiquiti product that I would have to pay a subscription for. I'd go to Cambium. I'd forklift my whole network, because if I'm going to pay a subscription. So, but this system could be a reoccurring revenue source for Ubiquiti. If you have an entire Ubiquiti network and everybody is paying through Ubiquiti's pay portal, they're getting 1.9% of your income.
So actually, there's two ways to this, right? So sure, it is definitely a good decision or business decision for Ubiquiti, definitely. But still, they are not actually making that 1.9%. They have to interface with banks. They have to go to clearing houses. There is a ton of compliance that they now have to make. So I don't, probably Ubiquiti will be losing quite a lot of money on this up until a certain point. There will be a break-even point where they have, where they are processing $500,000 a year. Maybe then that 1.9% will offset the cost of clearing houses, of banks, of auditors, of PCI compliance, and of everything else. And if you don't hit that limit, like let's say that is really $0.5 million a year, Ubiquiti will be bleeding money on this payment gateway stuff. And if they are bleeding money on it, the chance that it gets killed is even higher.
Yeah, perhaps that's where the 30 cents per transaction comes in. Maybe that's where they make their money.
You beat me to it.
There's a lot of companies that have that 30 cents. So I'm guessing that there's some fixed
underlying
cost Yeah.
It's just being competitive with everybody else. Yeah, everybody else has 30 cents plus some percentage. Yeah, so.
Yeah. But even said that it isn't that cheap. Like they're sort of touting it as like, other people charge 2.9, we only charge 1.9. Like I know that our Stripe agreement is much lower than that. And basically all we had to do is once we hit 1 million, we contacted them and said, well, look, we've just done 1 million worth of sales through you. Can you renegotiate our rate? Like it's, for them, the rate should be much lower, but it doesn't seem to be a huge difference from the other options available out there in the market with no effort required to get a comparable rate. So I don't know where they got that 2.9% from as this is the common fee, but I've not seen anyone that high.
PayPal.
No, like it's the public pricing. What Andrew is saying, that public pricing, just like you have public pricing on vendor equipment, and whoever pays the Cisco list price.
Yeah,
right?
so the MSRP.
Pretty much no one, right? And so oftentimes the public pricing of 2.9% plus some fixed fee can be easily renegotiated with your payment gateway provider.
It's amazing
just
what
to
you get
clarify,
when you just ask, right?
Yeah. Just to clarify, the Stripe is 2.9% plus 30 cents for international cards, and 1.75% plus 30 cents for domestic cards. So let's say the Ubiquiti system happens to be using Stripe in the background and they've got no further discounts or anything, then if they're passing on that as 1.9%, they're making that small margin there to start up with. And as soon as they reach a threshold, then they go back and go, Stripe, discount our rate, we make a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a good question. If they are using some external system and acting just as a intermediary, which they might be, that in that case they wouldn't be PCI compliance requirements. They could get around those. So who knows what they are doing, right? They might just be a glorified reseller of somebody else's services for this. But, it's even more complicated because, for example, with Stripe or same with us, we use Braintree, which is just another payment gateway for Unimus, right? Still, even if you have those, for example, you need a separate agreement for Amex cards. So Amex has a completely separate agreement from Visa and MasterCard, and you usually cannot process your payments through Amex or with Amex through your payment gateway without having a deal with Amex. And so it's a little bit more complicated regarding those payments and everything else. And who knows what Ubiquiti is doing, but I'm a little bit scared that they decided to go this way because, it's Ubiquiti.
So I just did a quick little googly search. And so we pay, looks like the highest that I've found. So, to check out, 3.99%. We pay is 3.5. But Braintree, Stripe, Amazon, Google, PayPal all have a 2.9% per transaction. And then there's Authorize.net, who I've never heard of, but supposedly they're massive.
Yeah, they're
and
big.
Yeah.
Dowala, I don't know. For under $10, it's free. Over $10, it's a 25 cents per transaction. And Authorize.net is a 10 cents per transaction fee. Good luck in figuring out how to integrate these into when somebody doesn't pay, turn off their internet.
Yeah. It was kind of mentioned tangentially at the beginning, but one of the big risk factors here is it says this is the price for the first year.
Right.
Who's going to enter into, this is going to be my payment gateway, not having any idea what day 366 means.
I guess if you have 20 customers, no big deal. If you have 2,000, you're going to be stuck.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, who's to say it's brand new? I don't even know anybody who's using it yet or has tried it yet. So I guess after a little bit of runtime, we can talk to some folks and see what the straight dope is on that.
If you use UCRM, please comment on the video if you have any intentions of using Ubiquiti Payment Gateway.
There you go. All right. So the last couple of weeks, I've personally been making my brains leak out of my ears. So I'm working at Red Hat now. I'm trying to fire hose myself with as much Ansible stuff as I possibly can. You know what I found that's kind of killing me is there is no good SEO for Ansible, really. So, I mean, they're good for playbooks, like regular engine, there's good at search engine optimization, right? So, like, you go to Google and you type for a thing and you can probably find it. But when you start to use their the GUI tower, which is what the product I'm really supposed to be representing and selling, there is like nothing. If I Google for a problem, there is like nothing, and I will bang my head for like an hour and a half to 2 hours, and then I'll hit up Jimmy, the guy on my team. He's like the smartest guy, pretty much in general, but also on Ansible. He kind of cheats. He has like this eidetic memory, so he like remembers what page number things are on, and he can like see the text in his head. So it's totally not fair. So he's really just as dumb as me. He's just, got a superpower.
Can you hook the search engine up to him?
I know, right? And I just somehow he's not very tall, so perhaps I can just shove him into my ear, just straight in there. I don't like the imagery that's probably conjuring in people's minds. That's not what I meant to say there. But but so I'll bang my head against the wall for like an hour and a half, and then I'll just text Jimmy real quick, hey man, I'm trying to do this thing, and he'll think for like 3 minutes, and he's like, sends me a link, and it's like this very obtuse piece of information that I don't know. It's just it blows my mind that in 2020 there's a major product that most of the Fortune 500 companies out there use, and it doesn't have like the most amazing SEO. So it's kind of breaking me. And I don't know if you guys have ever run into trying to use products where you just can't do that stuff. You know what it's forcing me to do is ask for help, and that is one of the things I hate doing the most. Because I want to forge my own path. I want to do it my own way, and show everybody that I can do this. And I have to keep asking questions. Having said that, I'm leading a workshop in a week and a half, so that'll be interesting. That'll be a fun one. But I digress. I'm going down a rabbit hole. You guys know how much I love talking about myself. I've been writing playbooks. So I wrote one for updating Catalyst 3550s. I thought that was pretty good because, on those old switches, you actually have to delete the old firmware. Then you have to TFTP the new, and then you got to reboot the Joker. So it is exceptionally good at doing things like that, where it waits and, has different timeouts and expecs and things like that. I also did one where it uses mikrotiks as probes. I thought this was kind of a fun use case. So while I don't work at Fibertown anymore, I still have access to a couple of probe mikrotiks in both data centers. So I wrote a playbook that, like a junior engineer, could fire off. That it pops up and asks you for, troubleshooting, like a destination IP, and then it connects to those remote devices, does all the troubleshooting, that aggregates all the information, then hands it over to you. I thought that was pretty cool too. Thomas, this may
helping them replace some more people.
No, I'm not trying to replace people. I'm trying to streamline things. Right, like one of the...
a small shell script.
Well, no, I mean, think about it like this. Like, you're a new guy at a company, you're a junior engineer, you walk in the door. The last thing I want to do is give you access to the backbone routers, right? Like, I really don't want you to log in, but I still want you to be able to troubleshoot as adequately as anybody else. So I can give you these training wheels that make that super simple. Or imagine you're just a regular NOC technician. I can give you, again, training wheels that allow you to get to important pieces of equipment, but in a very handheld, safe manner. So it kind of, not trying to replace jobs. I'm trying to make lives easier, but there's very much a difference. I also wrote this playbook. So all this came about. I said, hey, give me a sample scenario that an average customer request will be, and they threw like 5 things at me, and it was kind of cumbersome to aggregate all of them. One was use a secrets engine like Hashicorp Vault, and I said, what's that? So I started Googling and had to figure out what Vault was, and then how to configure a Vault server, and then interacting with a Vault. So that was tedious at first, just
Hey.
because I came in not knowing anything. And so I was just curious, have you guys ever used like Vault or other secrets engines in your systems?
I
Like
haven't, but I've seen this great article about how to implement one. It was on your website. So now if someone searches it, they're going to be fine.
It's very much for lab use. So the vault concept is interesting to me. So they call it a vault because you can imagine it like a bank vault. And so whenever you first initialize the vault, it generates a number of keys. By default, it generates 5 keys, and you're supposed to take these keys and separate them. So imagine like real keys that you have to a real vault. Only it takes 3 of those keys together to unseal the vault. So the idea being, if a key over here, if Thomas's key gets stolen, no big deal. If Thomas's and Mike's keys get stolen, no big deal. It actually requires 3 of us individuals all having our keys together and turning the lock at the same time to unlock the vault. So it's a pretty cool concept how it works. Once you unseal the vault, you can just start storing all kinds of information in there. You basically give it a key and value pair. So you could say like tacos equals Tuesday, and then so you can just request tacos out of there and it'll give you Tuesday, right? So you can have all kinds of information stored inside this thing, and then you can seal the vault and create these complex tokens and hashings. And I don't know, it's a pretty cool concept that I've just never been introduced to. I really liked the visual idea of vaults with keys separated and unlocking all that stuff. Obviously, I'm not using it in the right way because I just wrote a bash script that on boot it unseals the vault. Which is
Put all the keys in one script?
yes, of course. Totally not what you're supposed to do, but you can configure it to just have a single key, and then you can have the bash script unseal it with that one key on boot. So that's in essence what I'm doing. The bare minimum just to get it up so that I can talk to it with my systems, just to work with it. But it's
Can you change? Can you change the number of keys that are required to unlock?
You can say 1, you can say 5, you can say 8. I'm not sure what the max
So you could
is.
potentially store 1 key with the machine and then 1 key with your Ansible installation, and have it include the second key to unlock the vault, and then use passcodes and things to get into switches or servers or anything like that.
But you could. So when you, by default, every vault is sealed, and then whenever you're ready, you unseal the vault. That vault stays unsealed until you like if it's just an individual machine, like you've got a server that's got it installed. I mean, they have the ability to do high availability clusters with these things. But if you've got just a single vault on a machine, if it reboots, when it comes back online, the vault is sealed again. So it really stays unsealed so long as it's high available and it's there. But you can also manually seal it at any point in time that you want. Or you can create user accounts with like tokens associated with those. So it's kind of an easy way to apply your token to the vault to retrieve information out of it once it's unsealed. And you can revoke access via tokens. You can boot users. You can boot entire sections of vaults. You can boot a whole vault. I mean, you can do kind of whatever you want with it. So it's pretty neat. It's almost like it feels a bit to me the way I used to think about like network engineering for Google. It's like that's on a whole different planet than I operate on, right? The scale and size of that stuff. And so when you start looking at like vaulting systems like this, I start thinking about these. It's crazy because I'm starting to get to work with like the Fortune 500 companies, some of the biggest companies in the world. I'm going to get to start working with these guys. And I guess I had not really thought about that part of it. So it's actually pretty cool. So I'm going to get exposed to a lot of interesting things and technologies, which means I got to learn a lot of stuff really fast, which I absolutely love. Like I haven't been this engaged in forever.
I'd be very interested to hear, as part of what you can share from that, just in the future, things that you sort of come across about technologies at scale that you wouldn't have considered or you haven't sort of experienced yourself prior. Because it is something like I've worked for a few companies that have started small and sort of got to a decent size, and you see the way that you look at other companies, how they're doing certain installation procedures or how they're doing their management over here, and Thomas, you guys are probably running into similar things when you sort of scale up. It's like you go from, well, this is how we did it at one point when we needed to spin up another machine, and then all of a sudden, well, now that's all automated. We can spin up 50 of them and spin them down as needed, or even just deploying equipment. In my ISP job, spinning up 200 routers to install in customer rooms is now a process that takes an hour, 2 hours maximum, whereas originally it would take like a whole day to get everything updated, build configs, etc. So I think, yeah, if we could pull some of that out of your brain at a future date, that'd be very interesting. But I'm curious to hear from the listeners as well. What's something you have sort of experienced at another company that you were sort of like sitting down here with the toys and then looking at someone and going, oh wow, they've got like the power tools over there they're using to build things.
And I think Thomas, like you said, has a very unique perspective on this stuff, because he did start with really just him as the initial developer of Unimus, and now he's grown to a team. So I think, Thomas, weren't you saying that like when you start out like with an SCM, it's really easy just to kind of pass files back and forth and do all that stuff, but then once you really have a team that starts growing, you have to kind of change the way you think about all that stuff and operate?
Yeah, completely. Like, and it's not just the technical stuff, it's also the organizational stuff, right? You suddenly need to basically have work ready for juniors, right? You need to delegate completely differently. Your processes and your checks and balances within company have to be different. And then, of course, there's the whole technology stack that, you know, needs to scale with you, needs to not bottleneck you and your processes and your company and everything else. Like, it's, you know, it goes all the way from, like, the people stuff to management stuff to processes to technology, right? Everything has to scale. And the discussion and the debate of how do you scale that is complicated, definitely.
You know, through this marketing indoctrination that I keep going through, as you know, it's an amazing program they have, and they've put so much time and energy into this training stuff. You could definitely tell. Like, I'm at the point now, so I'm halfway through the training stuff, where you get subscribed to this flashcard system. So everything you learn every day, you get like 8 flashcards you go through that just reiterates all the information that you've learned. So it's dude, they're on their stuff. They obviously have a good system put together. They run a tight ship, but a lot of the marketing stuff that I'm reading, I mean, it is like they're talking about like the Internal Revenue Service for the U.S. You know, is like a customer, and then you do this thing, or like Verizon, or, you know, just it's like the biggest multinational companies. And all of the projects we get brought in on are exactly what you say, Andrew, scalable. I mean, that's the name of the game, because these people, they're hitting a limitation in one form or fashion somewhere or another, and they need a system that's going to theoretically, you know, because I'm doing air quotes here, theoretically be able to scale so they don't run into these bottlenecks, they don't hit these walls. And so whenever you start scaling to the global size that these guys are, how do you do that in a manageable fashion, right? So if it's a single product, you probably have really a small team, well, maybe not a small team, but a team of guys that are managing that individual product. And so how do these guys keep their hands around something so massive? You know, obviously those guys aren't going to be taking the support calls, and they're not, going to be arguing with the payment gateway processing people over here, right? But, you know, just keeping it alive. Like, how do you... I like when you start hearing about OpenShift, the way it manages like these giant Kubernetes cluster, because that's really what the upstream project is Kubernetes. So how does it maintain all these clusters of containers, you know, and then automatically take care of the networking and spin things up and down on a global basis and do all that stuff intelligently? It's just, I mean, it's incredible the mountains these guys move with just a couple of clicks of a mouse, you know, and how it's all just seamlessly orchestrated together and tied together with all of these different Red Hat products. Because it's pretty mind blowing. Like when you get behind the scenes and it's like opening up a grandfather clock and you see all of these gears just intricately moving together, and everything's just, you know, all I have to do is wind this thing once a day and then it does all this magic. You know, it's pretty crazy to see. And I don't know that I'm ever going to be able to wrap my head all the way around some of this stuff. But man, it's super cool.
And so now I assume that if, just generally speaking, that if you're working with them, they've got at least an automation mindset. Do you see much of a variance in how the large organizations engage automation, engage doing things intelligently, or is it just, some people are all the way in and some people are, no less than you?
Man, you got to ask me that question about 6 months. I'm still way too green to have any real perspective on it. But from what I've seen so far, is it runs the gambit. I mean, you see people that are intimately familiar with automation platforms and are comfortable with using it, and they're just looking for, hey, we're thinking about using it over here for this. Can you show us how it would sort of do those things? It's like we use it on all of our server infrastructure and all of our data centers. We do all of our automation here. I think there's a published use case where Microsoft used Ansible to orchestrate all of their networking in their office spaces, because they actually, as far as actual humans that have offices and the networking associated with that, there's a team that takes care of all that stuff, and they orchestrated all of that using Ansible, and so that was really cool to see them leverage that stuff. So their systems are so tight that if a trouble ticket comes in, they can basically put it in the system. It will go through, reach out to all the equipment, do all of the troubleshooting that a human typically would do. I mean, all the way through client testing. It'll turn on probes, sniff the Wi-Fi, look for interference, do all this stuff, aggregate all of that information, throw it into a ticket automatically in the ticket system, and then start working that for, so it's crazy how they've turned it into this I was about to say Rube Goldberg machine that kind of, kicks the bowling ball that rolls down, that cuts the rope that makes the toast pop up, but it's how they've tied, all of these really functional systems together through one central piece of orchestration. It's amazing watching these guys do it. So, but then I've also, I was part of one where there's a trucking company who's looking at, automating some of the provisioning of their switch ports and stuff in some of their offices, and they've never done any automation at all. So it's, it's I think it's definitely going to run the gambit of all kinds of things. So
which that kind of mirrors, not that I'm involved at the same level, but with the internet exchange and working with different, global or, CDNs or whatnot, other large networks, there is such a range of automation. You got some of them where you just go to a website, you type stuff in, stuff just shows up, you plug it in, and it works.
Oh yeah, like Megaport, like Andrew's Aussies there, right?
Yet there's other companies that it's a big rigorous process. They send you 10, 15 servers. It's a manual process as far as entering serial numbers and IP addresses and subnet masks into every machine, and if things are wrong, guess what? You get to wipe the machine out and start over. It's just how have you gotten to be so big and have, zero ability to manage this in an automated fashion? I remember back when I did a lot more desktop support stuff, obviously spinning up CDN servers isn't the same as spinning up Windows desktops, but Microsoft had a program. You just plug it into the network. If you know the MAC address, it just, the desktop you want shows up. You just, it baffles me that large organizations can't get out of their own way.
It costs a lot of money to get there, though, Mike. Even more if you're big.
But like, if you're earning hundreds of millions or billions of dollars a year, what would it cost for a dev team to make that not a problem? Can't really be that much.
You know what I have found is that some automation, and I think Thomas can probably, I think Andrew can attest to this too, because he's doing a lot of automation now as well, is that you kind of have to make like a mental shift, right? Instead of thinking about what are the specific things that I clack away on a keyboard now, I'm just going to try and automate that one thing that I clack away, instead of kind of like switch to the idea of, if I could dream of an ideal situation, what would it look like, and how do I make that sort of happen? Because I know Andrew, on his products, like, they've built a lot of amazing like troubleshooting tasks, automatic provisioning things inside of his systems, and so it does sound it does sound like you kind of slowly started your way into that, but it sounds like it's become really like this one-stop shop for taking care of your entire network, has it not?
Yeah, we've slowly been building out. Originally we had sort of separate NMS, and then there was the system that handled basically user control, authentication, billing, etc. And now that's taking more of a swing into, well, if you're gonna have these sort of plans and these sort of speed options available at a site, well then it needs to be this router that can support that. And if it needs to be this router that can support that, and you've also got an internet connection that's coming in via fiber, actually the system can work out and go, well, you need a fiber port, so we need to change you to this type of router. Here's the ports that are going to be provisioned. You can go in and sort of select different ones, but then whenever I'm writing anything now, whenever I'm writing a test or a piece of, whether it's like router S script to fix something up, or a set of SSH commands to change port configurations, it's like, always now my variables are at the top. So if someone else needs to come back and do this later, or they need to implement this as part of a larger system, how are they going to do that? Do it and do it on multiple ports if needed. Like, I might be just changing one port to give someone the ability to plug in a VoIP phone in a room, but if next week we need to do it for 3 different ports and have a VoIP phone and a TV, and then broadcast a second SSID as a staff network, how can someone do that with what I'm writing today, rather than having to reinvent the whole thing later on? So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now whenever I do something like I'm building a server, or I'm making a configuration change on a server, I start making a playbook right along with every change I make to that server. It's like, this was the first step, and then I write it into a playbook, then I do the second step, and I write it into a playbook. So that way I do it once, and I never have to deploy that same exact server again. I've got the automation that sort of does it. And to be honest with you, now that I'm thinking that way, thinking kind of automation first, I'm getting a lot faster at it. It was definitely a slog at first. It was, just getting accustomed to anything. You know what I mean? Just, it's like when I went to Australia for Andrew's wedding, and I had to drive on the wrong side of the road. That was quite an adjustment. And I only got in almost 2 accidents. I almost went the wrong way.
Went the wrong way around a roundabout?
Yes, it was a roundabout. And Christy screamed, and I hit the brakes, and we were cool. And she said I almost got into a Tim Tam Slam. And then the next time is I went down the wrong way on a street, and then all of a sudden a bus started coming straight at me. So I got out of the road pretty quickly on that one. So yeah, it's like you're switching to something you're just unfamiliar with. Yeah, it's going to be a little uncomfortable at first, but I adjusted. So it was good. We survived it.
I'm glad you're not dead.
You'll get me next time. Don't worry, Andrew.
So actually, for servers and the stuff, your goal shouldn't be configure it manually and write the playbook at the same time that you'll configure it the next time, right? For servers, what you really want is you want to define the desired state, and you want your automation to ensure that that state is valid all the time. You don't want a playbook to just configure something. that's not the right way, because anybody can come in later and change it in a way that it's not supposed to be there. So if you only have an automation that deploys something to a particular state, but that doesn't, enforce, for example, the right packages, the right config files, etc. It's great. You are automating, but it's not the entire, that shouldn't be your end goal.
Yeah.
Your end goal should be to have actually, infrastructure as a code.
Yep.
The question is, how do you get there the easiest, which is the entire another debate, right?
Yeah,
we all
for
know
sure.
that without automation, we all have to automate, and the world has to automate to move forward. There is just not enough people and not enough time to do everything manually, right?
Oh, yeah.
For example, my question is, and my biggest concern is, which is much more complicated and a much more deeper discussion. It goes into, how can you get to that point the simplest? How can you get to that point the easiest? How can you, share the knowledge and make sure that, once you are done with this, somebody else can come and pick it up and reuse it, like Andrew said. All of those things are very complicated. And so, for example, we have a dedicated system admin in our company now, because I was previously doing it, but, that just not enough time anymore. And I handed over my entire Puppet repository to him, and he's been fighting with it for about a month now. And that's just, he knew Puppet coming into our company, and he knows the technology stack, but just taking over that entire code repository and all those modules and all those state and understanding, how that works. It's taken a fully trained up person, knowing the technology, knowing the code, the coding language and everything. It has taken him a month just to understand what it does. And so imagine how long it would take somebody who doesn't know Puppet to get to that point, right? It's ridiculous. So I think what's missing right now in this technology space, especially in automation, and especially like what you were saying with the big companies, I think really you have to look at motivations of why software exists in a way that it does, which I think really well ties into my rant about open source from some months back, and what your motivations for making software are and how you approach that software. And if you make it a open source software, or if you make it a commercial software. And I also think it comes into, as Mike said, why doesn't the company automate their, server provisioning process? Well, I think really IT people are great at complexity. It's basically our job to manage complexity, right? To understand complex systems and to know how to adjust them to perform a certain job, certain task, right? We have an intention that we want to make happen, and we have this huge complex machine which we need to tweak in the right way to make it happen, right? So we as IT people are really good at managing that complexity. The problem is when we as IT people start designing software, we usually carry that complexity into the software. Imagine, as I said, learning Puppet, takes a month just to learn the repository. Greg, you can say how long it took you to learn Ansible, right? And now you've started playing with Vault, and imagine, you just deployed Vault, but imagine how long it would take you to understand how to deploy a production-grade instance of Vault, right?
Yeah.
So I think, and what I don't like about the entirety of the current state of automation space is just the complexity and the challenge and the barrier of entry that there is to it. For me, it's ridiculous how in the year 2020, we still don't have simple software. We still don't have SEO for products, that are used by Fortune 500 companies. And it's what I personally, for example, what I would like to do and what I think really needs to be done is simplify, but not at the cost of features, not at the cost of the power of the system. The system should be simple to use, fast to pick up, easy to work with, but at the same time deep and powerful enough to and I feel those systems are just, or the existing solutions are just not there.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we are doing any better, right? It's just, I think I think we are coming at it from another perspective, for example. And I don't want to make this about me or my philosophy, but maybe others can say or other viewers can comment on what they think the correct landscape.
No,
of
man.
all
I don't
these.
think that's it's not the wrong idea. It's like we like hearing it from you as someone who's gone through a lot of this and has experienced, like that's what I find beneficial. It doesn't. Yes, some of it is always going to be your own take, your own opinion on how to do things correctly, but that's come about as a result of the experience and the failures you've had more than the successes, I would say. Like when something breaks down, then you sort of realize, well, this is why it should be done this way instead. And there's a lot of things out there that make our lives and sort of deploying things more difficult than if we were to just do them by hand. And it shouldn't be that. Like it should be, here is the automation system to sort of roll things out. This makes things easier for everyone, and it should be simple to understand.
Yeah.
No, I think software should be there to make our jobs easier, right? Software should exist to help people. And if you think about if you think about deploying a software solution that is supposed to help you, and then you realize that your head starts to hurt because you now just realize that I need to spend 3 weeks learning something that will make my life easier after those 3 weeks. I think that's... And I don't have the answer, right? I'm not saying I know the answer to this. I'm just complaining about stuff I can't change, really. So,
No, and I get it. It's so like it can feel daunting, especially. I try and put myself in your shoes, Thomas. I think probably undersized shoes that would cram my toes in there, but you have a lot of things moving at you really fast. You have a lot of complex tasks that need to be accomplished in a very short amount of time, and so it's like I definitely see, looking through your eyes, how you like the idea of, oh, now I've got to spend 3 weeks digging through the RFCs of how Radius works to get this one stupid system to work so I can get it off my table, off my plate, and then move on to the next dumpster fire. And so it's just the idea of having software that's simple and intuitive. It sounds like Andrew's eating potato chips over there on his keyboard.
Sorry.
No, you're kidding. Yeah. I totally get that. You did pop up a couple of points. You were talking about how there is no SEO for a lot of these big products, and while I was bitching about the place I work, I definitely love the product, don't get me wrong. But I was thinking about it. We've been going for walks out here every day, right, to help keep the quarantine panic down. And by quarantine panic, I mean just this feeling of I'm like a caged, trapped animal inside my house. Sometimes I start sort of like feeling a little overwhelmed. I just got to get outside, and nobody's wearing masks around here. And now we have some new science that says if everybody wears masks, it's going to be really beneficial because it doesn't necessarily protect you from them, but it protects them from you. So we're going for walks and nobody's wearing masks, and I'm wearing my mask out there. My wife's like, what are you doing? I was just like, nobody else is wearing them, and it's not going to protect me from them. Why am I going to do it? And I said, well, somebody's got to start. It's got to start with us. We have to lead. We're leaders. We've always led. Christy has always led groups of people. I was like, you have to be the leader. So I was thinking about the SEO stuff. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Every time I run into a problem, every time I run into a thing, I'm trying to write a blog post about it. And it's less about helping other people and more about just helping it stick in my brain because I know I'm going to Google for it and find my own article in 6 months. But I think a lot of that stuff, right, it starts with us. As far as we can make it better. And you were talking about writing playbooks, and I know I'm not necessarily doing it the right way. The idea of like installing Vault on a system, you want infrastructure as a code, so it just looks at the template for this thing and builds it. But what I'm learning about going through this Ansible stuff, and I'm sure this is old hat to you and just intuitively makes sense to you, Thomas, because you've been doing it so long. But a lot of this world is new to me, is that in Ansible, it's a layering effect. So you start with, if you've ever watched Bob Ross, he paints his canvas with a liquid clear so that he can start putting other paints on there, and starts layering them together. But they have like a base template. So if this is a web server, it starts with a base template that every server in the entire production over on this side gets, and so it'll apply that template. Well, then you say, is also a web server of this type, and so then it'll pull another template in your play, and it'll say, okay, apply that. And so it's kind of a layering of, I want this piece. Well, here's the template for it. Go ahead and apply all of those things. And so while it's not effective to say, hey, this is how you make the Vault Lab server, it is still effective if you build that playbook piece by piece. It's like, okay, these are the steps I did to reproduce that, and you layer it on top your base, right? Here's my base template, and that's, at least in the Ansible best practices stuff I'm going through now, that's how you kind of build that comprehensive infrastructure as a code. If this is a brand new thing that you've never, if you've never done any of that in your infrastructure before, like you've never installed a vault before, or you've never configured this particular type of load balancer, you go ahead and you write the playbooks as you're testing the server and building it. No, that didn't work. Let's do these things. I only do it at the same time because it can feel a little daunting after I've built the server to try and come back and then reproduce all of that like accurately.
So you should do that before. You should write your manifests or playbooks before and then just run it.
Okay.
Right?
If I've never installed Vault, I have no idea how it works or operates, and I'm just going to write a playbook that will magically do it, and I know it's going to 100% work every time. Or do I build a server, figure out, run into all the bugs, figure out all the things and pieces I need, document those, and then build a play that actually incorporates it? I'm not, my crystal ball doesn't work as accurately as yours, Thomas. So I have to actually figure things out as I go.
No, I mean, of course, there is a learning process, right?
Yeah,
but
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
You know, ideally, you don't want to include that learning process because it will be full of mistakes, right? You want to declare the desired state. And the desired state should be the best state you can do, which hopefully should be at the end of all of your playing and researching and you know, all of your play.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to include the process of getting to that desired state because that process will be full of mistakes by definition of the learning process, right? So we want to declare the desired state at the end of that entire thing, which is very different than step-by-step, you know, instructions of how you've got to that. To that point.
Yeah, for sure.
This is what I'm getting at, right? You should be declaring desired states.
Yeah, that desired state is in the juicy middle in the production. It seems like most of people when they're actually putting like dev servers together in the production, and then you've got like me over here. I'm on the very left side where I'm doing the initial build. This is my lab. I'm configuring it to even put it over here into dev, and then dev can start deploying that stuff. That's kind of like I'm in the infancy of all of this stuff. So yeah, I 100% what you get, like what you're saying. You're talking about declare it. It's gonna then stand up your production machines, and all that stuff will be beautiful and orchestrated. I'm still doing the research and figuring things out stage over here over the left. I'm the guy hunched over his computer in the basement lab in the middle of the night figuring things out.
For updates, watch this space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. It can all be pretty overwhelming. You know what's something that I saw that really brought all this stuff into hyper focus was rolling updates for me. It was a lab that I was doing where you've got load balancers in the front, and then you've got your web servers on the back, and then you're doing some code updates. And so what the system does is it goes through and it pulls one web server. It picks one out of the list. It does one web server, and then it goes to the load balancers. First, it disables that one web server and all the load balancers. So you write the script that's constantly hitting your load balancers so you can see which web servers are responding. So it goes and it pulls it out of the load balancer so it's not out, and then it attempts to push the production code to it, and then it does tests on the production code. And if they work, they pass, well, then it'll go back and it'll do 25% of the infrastructure in the exact same way. And then once those are back up and then in production, it'll go and it'll complete the rest of the infrastructure. And you dictate if X number fail, or if any fail, or whatever kind of quantifiable number you want. And then at the end of it, they've all been updated. And your test script that was running always hit a web server, right? They were always responding. And to me, that was just so beautiful. You know what I mean? It's like it was such a lovely process to see operate in real life. You know, I mean, I know it's a lab scenario, but this is what people do in these high available networks and this infrastructure, and it's such a graceful ballet that these systems can do it. You can write these systems to do that. I don't know. It was just one of those epiphany moments that just kind of, I was like, that to me, it quantified what the real power of all this automation stuff is about. So I am like super keen to see really highly complex system. I mean, but to me, that is such a simple thing. It was really small. The playbooks were really small. It wasn't an overly complex thing, and love or hate YAML, you can look at it and really quickly understand what it's doing. And so I thought it was, I don't know, it was really a beautiful system to me, and I can't wait to help empower other people to do that kind of stuff. You know, that actually do have teams of really intelligent guys that know what they're doing, not like me, but guys that can really take the power of this stuff. You know, if I can just give them a little taste, just kind of show them some of this stuff, and then they can take it and then make amazing things. I'm gonna be so stoked, like every day. I just can't wait. I just went on a little diatribe. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, you get to do that.
Hopefully I get to do that.
Hey Greg, why don't you just cut out the last 20-30 minutes when you make the production?
Yeah, of me ranting. Jesus, nobody comes here to hear me, just foam at the mouth.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that, guys. So
Yeah.
let's if we run the course on that one.
Don't feel bad about yourself. Picture if Tom was here in the similar scenario, what that rant would be like.
Conversation topic was BSD updates.
Oh my god. We'd all wake up from our comas after a couple of weeks. And then
Mikrotik UI design.
I was gonna say, by the time he was done, COVID would be over, so that would be kind of a relief. So it'd be nice to be on the other side of it. This is all staying in. You guys have to suffer through it, just like everybody here. So, Andrew, you found a 12-volt UPS for like $25 for a little device. I thought that was pretty cute little find.
Yeah, actually, I'll tie that into the other stuff as well. I saw one of the guys posting the other day a supplier in the US that provides Internet of Things SIM cards. So you can get I think it's a T-Mobile SIM card for like $49 a year with 64 kilobits, just unlimited. And there's they have other ones as well. There's like a 128 and a 512 kilobit. So we're looking at those and going, oh, well, we could use those for some out-of-band management. Like, it's enough for SSH, basically, with getting into a device and checking what's online at a site. And I was like, well, if these sites, so some of them have surge protection and stuff, but it's not warranted putting UPSs in across the site because you're dealing with like 15 different cabinets. So rather than keeping all the core stuff up as well, just be like, we found these little UPS devices that take 12 volts in, so just a barrel jack connector. They've got a couple of the standard lithium cells in them, and they do 12 volt barrel jack out. So you can put that in line with something like a little Mikrotik device or anything that can take a 12 volt supply. So I'll use that with like an LTAP or something, put the SIM card in. That keeps that device on for like another 6 hours after the power goes out. So I can actually log in and go, oh, look, the Ethernet port's gone down, serial's not responsive, therefore there's a power outage on site. So
yeah, it's cool.
And I'm assuming the LTAP, I haven't actually checked this, I'm assuming the LTAP has like a hardware voltage monitor, which is another thing in RouterOS you can use. So if you've got like a direct DC power supply, you can see the voltage dropping over time. Okay, the battery's nearly out. So, yeah. I'll send that link to you so you can put it in the post.
Huzzah.
Yeah,
I already put it.
It was Nick Bergoglio. I apologize. I'm never going to pronounce his name correctly.
It's Braulio.
Nick B.
Braulio.
Yeah.
Nick B. And it was embeddednetworks.net, and it's $50. Looks like you can just get a non-static IP, and then it was $80 a year, 64 kilobits per second, 12 months prepaid, and you're set. So it's a no voice, no SMS, just data. You get to use as much of that 64K as you want. So if you want to go back to dial-up speed, I think you guys were talking about this last time.
Yeah.
A little bit, but yeah, that really tickled an interest in me. I was like, ooh.
You
I did
probably don't
also
have T-Mobile
find
coverage.
Sorry, I did also find PoE Texas also makes a similar device which plugs directly into US 110 voltage. So plugs in as like a plug pack. It's got 2 batteries inside it and then just a barrel jack connector underneath. So you can use that as well. In my case, I wanted something that would just take 12 volts in, do 12 volts out, so you can chuck it in line anywhere. Seeing as like we already get power supplies for our Mikrotik devices and things.
Very nice. Very nice. Have you deployed a lot of the 4011s, Andrew?
Not too many of the 4011s. We use a few of them for business customers, just to get people off the ground with decent wireless and stuff before they've got their own routers installed, and then as something that can do all the way up to a gigabit, and we can B-test and everything with that as well. But not a huge amount in sort of core roles in our network. Generally, yeah, straight to, well, from sort of HAP AC2s to CCRs.
I've got a handful kind of out in different places, and I've had a mystery reboot on one, but somebody was talking about how there's some mystery lockups, and apparently on the forum, some people are saying to downclock the frequency on the CPU, something like that.
I haven't run into that yet.
I haven't either,
but I'll keep an eye out.
I've had some folks say that even that didn't fix it, and that they did an RMA and then they were good to go. So maybe it was just a little bad batch of routers that came through at one point. Not sure. Interesting.
Kind of. I mean, I guess it's nice to not have to replace the whole thing, and if you're only losing a few, 8% or 7% of your CPU power by downclocking at a couple hundred megahertz, you'll be fine. But oof, that would suck to have to do, particularly because the 4011s are cool because they have such high clock speed.
Yeah, they're beasts. Have you guys I assumed you're interested in this, Andrew, the netPower16s, the ones that just got announced, the outdoor 18
Very
port.
interested.
So 18 port? No, it's 16 port of PoE.
16 port and 2 SFP plus ports.
Right.
So it's it looks like a similar design to the CRS112-8P, where it's like it's got the dual power supplies in, so there's no voltage conversion or anything happening in the device itself. You supply it 24 volts and 48 volts, and then it still seems as though the sensing is there, so it can detect if something needs 24 or 48 and try and deliver that. But it's just passing through what the voltage delivered is. So definitely interested, because we have a couple of the Ubiquiti ESPs out in the field that are implemented in various places, and slowly we've been actually moving all of our new deployments to almost entirely Mikrotik gear, which is good. Like, it makes automation and stuff much easier when we're working all on the same platform, and then sort of keeping up with how versions change things. V7's obviously going to be a bit of a shift with how configurations work there, and then changing the terminal. For anyone that's heard that and started freaking out, it will all be backwards compatible early on, but they may start changing things in the future. So definitely great to see that they've bought out, yes, a 16 port outdoor switch with PoE versus the previous one, which was the 15 reverse PoE ports, which more so seems great for a GPen style installation where you're running out to people's houses. Not so great for putting a device up on a tower and running radios off it. So.
Yeah, and it is, like you said, AFAT compliant, so it's going to be standards based, and then also it's the CRS 300 series, which means it's got the good switching ASICs So it
Yep.
should have all the same.
Switch chip offloading
Yeah.
for all of your VLANs and things, which the 112 did not have.
Right.
So as soon as you started adding
Yeah.
VLANs and things, they're limited to a few hundred megabits.
It basically looks like it's a smaller version of a CRS 328P.
Yeah.
You know, seems to have the same style of PoE and all that.
Just a nice weather-hardened case. It even has like a nice heat sink on the back of it and everything.
That's a lot.
Back
and
and front,
Mikrotik's really getting big with their heat sinks.
Yeah. The audience
I
has got a
appreciate-
huge one. Like,
Yeah.
it's-
Massive.
The 1009s, you
It,
had the passive coolings options.
One kind of downside to this device I see is the style of power going into the box. Having downward facing barrel jack inputs. Y'all can just see over time those guys working themselves out if you don't have the correct
it's-
kind of strain relief or vertical support forcing it in.
It
why I
looks
use,
like it's the
Gorilla
same
Glue.
design. Just some thread lock in there. It looks like it's a similar design to the previous one, so I can't see any specific points to sort of attach those or lock
Right.
them in place. Like they do have a sort of or a couple of cable management rings like you'd normally see in a fiber optic breakout tray, but nothing to sort of hold them in place. So yes, that is something that few people have mentioned now, and I would also be concerned about locking them in place so that it doesn't accidentally get pulled out over time.
Yeah, and that's something, who was it? I think Brock Tice was talking about in his Cambium stuff, that he had some radios where if you didn't have the cable in there just right, it wasn't making good contact or whatever because there wasn't any good strain relief inside one particular unit he was using. So I think he said once he actually figured out a way to kind of do a little bit of that, all those problems sort of went away. I think it was Ethernet inconsistencies on a device. So it's not, it's definitely not a new problem for anybody.
In Brock's case, it was on an EPMP access point. I forget if it was 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. But the Airfiber 5X had a pretty bad go of this as well. Lots of people were having problems with that, and it was just how the connector was, or how the male connector was sitting in the female connector for it to stay working or not, or gig/100 meg.
In an ideal scenario, how would this look? I mean, how would it be made differently?
I would say so. They include a little barrel jack to terminal adapter with the switch.
Mm-hmm.
So just put a terminal adapter right on the radio. Those like those little plugs that you'd hit, the little tiny screw. You just plug the wires in and then plug the whole thing in, and then it locks.
Something that
Might make sense to
physically
include the
clips in.
opposite. Yeah.
Yeah,
Include one of the terminal plugs to barrel jack instead. So if people do want to use the barrel jack, they can plug it into a regular power supply. But if you want to actually secure it, then you can put your own plugs in there and wire it up to your tower power supply.
Yeah, solid. That way, it would make a good physical connection. You wouldn't have to worry as much about it coming loose. And also, if there was some kind of a ring somewhere around there where you could zip tie the wires to it, that would probably help.
Yeah, it's so the switch. The spec sheet says a maximum power consumption of 316 watts. So I don't know what the limit is for one of those barrel jacks, but normally they're only connecting on one side and the center. So I'm going to do a bit of research on that now and just find out. It seems like a lot for such a small contact.
Well, if you zoom in on the picture, it looks like you only do have one side and then the center. So,
Oh,
yeah.
bottom and center. Yeah.
Yeah, bottom and center. Now, that's just one view and angle, and this looks like it's computer generated,
It's just
or
the
at least
computer
really
generated one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, we have plenty of like Intel NUC computers that just run off the barrel jack and everything. You could get 100
Yeah, but I
watts out
can
of that.
confirm that my NUC has connection all the way around.
Yeah,
Let's hope that they did this too, because you need to pull at least 150 watts through each of those connectors, and you would assume that you're gonna have both going at the same time. Maybe not. Hey Thomas, I'm seeing one of these connectors says DC 18 to 30 volts, and then the other one is DC 2 48 to 57 volts. So would that mean that if you have both plugged in, it would pull from the 48 to 57 volt first?
Well, I mean, say for example, you're running just 24 volts off of this thing, and you said 300 watts. That's 12.5 amps.
Yep.
That's a lot of juice for a single power supply. So you don't usually see 24 volt like wall warts that are capable of kicking out 12.5 amps. It's going to be kind of a big power brick.
Yeah, 316 watts, max power consumption without attachment 16 watts. So it's 300 watts for the PoE out part.
That's a spicy meatball. That's a lot of power.
Yet, and then I believe on the power, I believe it's if you want to use 24 volt out, you use the 24 volt input. If you want to use 48 volt out, you use the 48 volt input. I don't believe there's any buck boost converters in there to modify the voltage. It just takes whatever it gets on one and sends it out as configured on the port.
I wonder if it uses both barrel jacks to power the switch. That way you kind of have some power redundancy there.
How Mikrotik works normally is that it uses the higher input voltage. The secondary, the lower input voltage is just ignored until the higher one fails, normally.
Okay, that's cool.
So also, I just did a quick little googly search, and you might want to consider this if you're going to be powering a bunch of stuff off of this switch. If you are running wire to the switch to power it, you should minimally, if you're going 10 feet, just 10 feet, so 3 meters, you should be using 18 gauge wire if you're going to be pushing 12 amps to your switch. And if you're at 25 feet, you should be using 14 gauge wire.
So that gets pretty big pretty quick. I wonder what the size of the wire is that the terminal adapter accepts.
Yeah, well, and that's at 12 volts. Now, admittedly, if you get up to higher voltages, you can use, you get a little bit better efficiency there, but still, like, don't skimp on the size of your wire, because you're going to get really hot wire really quick. So
you know what else I was noticing is whenever you look at the very first picture of it, I like how industrial and nondescript this thing is. Like, it looks like just any other box you'd probably screw to the wall. I like that it doesn't scream, "Hey, come jack with me." I'm looking.
Wait. In the sort of post-coronavirus world, are you sure that someone's not going to see that and go, "That's a 5G antenna. We should burn it down"?
No,
I don't know that
5G
we've
will
had.
kill them all, so I don't have to worry about them.
I don't know that we've had much of that here. I think it's mostly been New Zealand and the UK.
yeah,
Not that we have.
UK's got it pretty bad.
Not that we have any shortage of idiots, but it's just our idiots are focusing on other things.
No, we've got a whole state full of them. It's called Florida.
Okay, I'm just looking at a couple of spec sheets for those barrel jacks. It looks like the largest amperage for most of them is 11 amps. So if you're buying your own components and stuff to make up cables and things for this, I would very much recommend you check the amperage that your Tommy said make sure you're using the right gauge wires as well.
Interesting.
Or put heat sinks on your wire.
But again, that's probably going to be we're talking max output, right? I guess nominal RMS that most of your equipment's going to be calling is probably going to be a lot less than that. So your mileage.
Yeah, but that assumes people are smart. Like you know that there's someone out there that's going to install it. Oh yeah, well we're only putting 3 or 4 radios on this, and they come back and some other tech takes over next year, and he plugs 4 more in, and then the next guy comes out. Why are all my wires melting?
It's
a stupid Mikrotik product. Like
in my head, I was picturing an apartment complex, and you're feeding like half AC squareds with it. I was like, oh yeah, that would be great. I wasn't actually thinking like you're feeding high power radios up on a tower. That's that could be problematic.
I mean, to be fair, most of my 5 gigahertz radios don't pull more than 10 watts most of the time. So you could fill up all 24 of those ports and not pull them over 240 watts easy. Like all of my Ubiquiti AC Gen 2s, 5 AC Gen 2s, it's rare that I even see them pull 10 watts. And then Mimosa, I think it's the same thing. Like
Ruckus are real power drawers. Well, actually, any radios that have heaters in them as well to protect against freezing. So that's the ones where I see high usage. So
yeah, you're not going to be powering those off of PoE, I don't think.
You do. Like the Ruckus ones, the 48 volt Ruckus ones, all power off PoE, but and they've got built-in heaters.
It's the same with CCTV cameras. Many CCTV cameras have heaters in there for the winter, and you power those out of PoE as well.
Cambium EPMP access points.
They'll pull the full.
Actually, for a while there was a problem. People were having some reliability issues, and they on some models or on some batches, the heater would draw too much at boot up, so that it wouldn't allow the radio to actually turn on. I think those are fixed with the firmware update. I'm not sure, but yeah.
You could fix that with the firmware. Well, depends, I guess, how it's wired. But yeah, actually, my most of the stuff is bouncing between 12 and 17 watts, so not nearly as cheap and efficient. But I mean, still, that's pretty low wattage, all things considered. If you're just running radios, if you do have a if you have a camera that has motors, and that's something that will, if you're moving the camera around all the time, that's going to eat up a lot of power too. Infrared, LED stuff too, that'll eat it up. So yeah, you got to be careful. Make sure to put a note on the piece of equipment that says, FYI, I only ran 36 gauge wire to this thing because I'm a lazy bugger, and don't run more than 20 watts through this thing, because I ran 36 gauge wire, because that's what Tommy was thinking about. So what else new? There's something else new from Mikrotik, wasn't there?
It was called the N-Ray. It's another another 60 gig radio, I believe.
Yes. I need to get a hold of Double Radius and order some.
And if we're talking about potentially bad designs, a few people have noted something that could be a big problem here. So Mikrotik have a lot of the radios that are designed to go in offset satellite dishes and things. I've seen those before. Generally, they're gonna sit on an angle to the dish, so you've got sort of the cable connector facing down, or at least on an angle. Whereas these N-Ray devices, it appears as though it's connecting directly at the back of the radio, and the cable goes straight in there. So if for whatever reason you don't have a good sort of waterproofing around there, or like a tight fit, and even through capillary action, you can see why water get through cables and things like that. So as soon as someone pointed it out, I was like, oh yes, that could be a bit of a problem where you've got water running down the cable and just making its way through there into the back. So I'm interested to see what the protection against that is, because it would not be great to roll out a bunch of those and in 12 months have to replace them because they're full of water.
So I guess you'll just have to take a tube of silicone with you, and just blast up that back hole.
Just 3D put a little cover to go over the top of it.
There you go.
Little hat.
I started to, and I have failed to do so reliably, is put some, I can't even think what it's called now. It's a little non-conductive silicone type stuff that you can just spray into a connector before, like,
dielectric gel, is that what you're talking about?
yeah. That could help some of that. Not so much water getting in the radio, but at least keeping the connector clean.
Yeah, I somehow missed that one. I've kind of had my head down and missed a few things here or there. That's interesting. So, Andrew, you sent me a link to a 40 gigabit optical comb. I thought that was kind of an interesting read. It doesn't. I mean, is that a new thing? Because we've done wave division.
That sounds like something I should have.
We've done wave division multiplex and stuff. But yeah, certainly I don't need a comb. We've done that stuff in the past. I was just curious what's new and different about this.
As I understand, this is powered off a single laser, but the idea is just that they're sort of simplifying the design for using multiple frequencies to pass data at the same time. It's, yes, you can think of it like a CWDM or DWDM setup, but all built into the one item. So the testing environment they're running it at here, they're just using a local fiber ring, and the modules sit on either end of that, and the just to pull the article up here again, I think the speeds they were pushing across it were 40 terabits or something, wasn't it?
I think it was 44.2.
40 terabits through a single optical fiber. Oh, I thought it was 40 gig. It's 40 terabits per second. That does sound a little different.
So we're getting pretty fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit more impressive.
Yeah. Let me go to the dock and change that G.
I'm still holding out for my quantum XFPs, but
That's excellent.
But yeah, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, this is no big deal. This is, there's lots of capacity pushed through fiber all the time. And then I realized, oh, it's not just splitting it out into a whole rack full of, CSFPs. It's one device driving it.
It's a single chip.
It's one optic, yeah. That's pretty baller.
Tiny as it is, so...
Would they say it's like fingernail
It's a thing called
size?
a microcomb. Yep.
So now, isn't this a bit ironic that this is...
it's coming from Australia, where we've got crap internet?
Well,
Emphasis.
I was getting there. Yeah, it's being worked on with the NBN, and from what I hear, the NBN's not all that great.
I don't think they're working on it with the NBN. It was more of a joke. Like as a result of all the COVID-19 stuff, NBN sort of been posting stats about their network, going, we've seen the highest amount of traffic ever. It's what did we get up to? 13.8 terabits on April the 8th this year. So they're like, that's huge. And these guys are like, well, this one chip that we've built here could handle that like 3 or 4 times over. So
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty cool.
I hear
tech.
you guys are getting a new tax as well to feed the NBN.
Yep. We will be paying that tax because we don't use the NBN. We build our own networks at the moment. So some very unhappy customers are going to see a $7.10 NBN tax on the end of their bill. And when they call up and ask what that is, well, we can refer them to talk to NBN Co about that.
Interesting.
And it's not technically NBN Co's job to enforce it or anything like that, but it's their monopoly that's being supported by the government, and it's a bit frustrating that they feel like they need to tax other providers to to make that viable. It's like if you can't build a network that's viable on its own, like it should be an infrastructure project as part of the country instead, and it shouldn't need to make money. Like it's like the postal service. Like you support a postal service because it helps support everything else. Like why do you need to then? It's like, do they charge DHL and FedEx extra charges because they're operating outside of the postal service? Seems silly to me.
That's interesting. So they're going to tax every one of your customers to feed into another
we'll be
monopole.
taxed for it. So every customer that we're providing, like every service we're selling monthly, will be charged an extra $7.10, which obviously like we'll have to pass on in some way.
Wow, $7, that's a lot, man. That's
it's
not
a
like
huge
something that
amount.
just kind of like if it's a 50 cents or a buck, I mean that kind of disappears, but I mean $7, that's like a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
Well, considering like a lot of internet plans range from like $50 to $70, like that's the sort of sweet spot for most people.
Yeah,
it's like 10%.
10% of your bill.
Crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And that's on top of the 10% GST. Like,
So I just did a quick Google. There's 8.42 million households in Australia. Assuming they all have internet, that's another $60 million a month.
well, that's so NBN doesn't charge it to themselves because they consider it's already in their cost. So the service providers who are using NBN don't incur any additional cost there. It's any networks that aren't part of the NBN.
Oh,
will
that's
incur
even
that
worse.
cost. So it's a smaller amount of networks,
But only
people
if you're
providing
selling to an end
faster,
customer.
less shittier service. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it's,
Honestly, that sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen.
I'm sure
that's
some
like-
lawyers are making a lot of money out of this.
Yeah. Well, that's the only people who ever make money anyway is the lawyers. You know, all the rest of us just scrape by.
Hey.
Yeah, sounds like a really nice business discrimination lawsuit.
Yeah, so yeah, like, you know, in your example, yeah, it's like, you know, charging DHL $7 per package delivered and then giving it to the post office. It's like, what's the point in that?
Yep.
That $7 would, because we don't do taxes and fees, that would completely wipe out all the profit I have, because I have a $35 a month package. And actually, I know guys down in Texas who have fiber optic stuff that they'll just hook up somebody for $5 a month for like, it's like $100K or a couple $100K a month, and it's like $5-10 a month, and it's like, wow, you couldn't do that if somebody was being taxed $7 a month or God.
yeah. In Texas, we have a law that the first 20, at least it used to be, I'm not sure if it still is, but the first $20 are non-taxable of an internet bill.
Huh.
So if it's under $20, there legitimately is no tax associated with that.
I love
Yeah, it makes
Texas a
writing
little bit more.
taxing on those all the weirder.
Yeah.
If state is Texas and service is under $20, zero tax. Otherwise, like
No, just the first $20.
yeah.
Yeah, so you just subtract $20. If state is Texas, subtract $20 from bill, then add tax. I know my programming.
Now it's like minus
Then
$20.
add the
Okay, we're
$20
calculating the
back
tax
in.
on minus 20.
Everybody talking at once. The most heated topic ever.
And
Tax
so
calculation.
this is why the state needs more cobalt programmers, right?
No, it's so we can keep the nuclear missile systems working.
Yeah, yep.
Alright. What other fun stuff was there popping up this week?
So, Thomas, do you know of anything else interesting that happened the past couple weeks?
Oh, there's a bunch, but I don't think we have the time anymore. We've been here for 2 hours at this point.
Oh, come on, Thomas. We haven't heard you rant hard enough. Let's get it.
You just give
I've
us
got
some brief.
rants. Yeah. All right. So first of all, there is a 10 out of 10 VCSA, which is vCenter server appliance. So VMware 10 out of 10 RC remote code execution.
Woof.
Anybody with access to your VSA can get full administrator rights on the VSA without, just by having access to it. It's the exploit is in LDAP service, which runs on the vCenter. So immediately patch your vCenter servers, otherwise anybody can get full root access to them. Then there is my Apple is just being crap, as Apple always is. So Zerodium actually stopped accepting RCE or exploit submissions for Apple because there is now too many of them. So and there is a official Zerodium employee saying that Apple security is just completely effed. And so Apple should be really ashamed of themselves. There is too many bugs, there is too many exploits, there is too many remote code executions and local code executions errors. They are just not paying off for the next at least 3 months while Apple gets their crap together. Because at this point, accepting any more exploits would be detrimental to fixing the existing exploits. So if you are an Apple user,
So
security
what's Zerodium? Is that like a bug bounty company sort of thing?
Yeah, they are basically, and Mikrotik has been using them for a while as well. We covered this on the podcast a couple of years ago, probably at this point. But yeah, Zerodium is basically a exploit collection company that vendors can pay, and they will handle your bug bounty program. And so they collect bugs, they collect exploits, they pay out to the end developers or hackers, whiteheads, whoever, and then they have a deal at the back end with the big vendors and big companies that they resell these vulnerabilities and exploits to. So yeah.
There's too many. We're not accepting any more right
now.
Yes.
And it's funny.
Tells you...
It's funny.
Tells you something about the state of Apple and iOS security.
Wow.
Yeah, and Apple, who prides themselves on, we're this uber great security, come to us if you want security and privacy and all these things, and we're great. It seems like when somebody,
good luck with that.
it seems like once somebody pierced that veil, it was just a veneer. And it just seems as though once you get through, it's just a whole pile of
you're saying
crap.
We shouldn't look behind the curtain?
I think the curtain's already been looked behind, and they vomited.
So while I am ranting and complaining, my credit card got blocked this week because of QuickBooks. So QuickBooks Pay Online feature does not support SCA, which is strong customer authentication for credit cards, which is the 3DS, 3D Secure system. It is now completely mandatory in Europe that every single transaction has to have SCA authentication, 3D Secure. So if some of you remember, I mentioned that we don't really have issues with card skimming in Europe or with stolen credit cards. In Europe, the laws around credit cards and credit card payments are much more strict than the US. I have never in my life yet had a problem where my credit card info was stolen, or I have yet in my life never had to block a credit card. And this is the experience for the vast majority of people here, because of strong customer protection laws, which result in very strong security laws for banks and companies handling the credit card stuff. And so how SCA works is that if you make a credit card payment, it is mandatory that it is acknowledged by a second form of authentication. So it's like 2FA or MFA for credit cards. For me, it is that every payment, which is more than 20 euros, so like more than $25, I get a text message and I have to confirm basically from that text message. I have to, you get a separate code which you need to enter on the website purchasing it. So I was making a purchase through QuickBooks Pay Online last week, and it was a sizable, it was a much more than $25, obviously. And QuickBooks Pay Online doesn't support SCA, so my bank blocked my credit card because my bank thought the credit card was stolen. And I had to spend about 45 minutes on the phone unlocking the credit card and explaining the bank that no, this is just a US company which doesn't necessarily abide by European regulations because international laws and international stuff is fun. And so thank you, QuickBooks, for wasting 45 minutes of my life. Please implement SCA. Everybody is doing it. You are an international mega corporation that, you should be handling this. So yeah, that's my rant section.
So I can't remember if we talked about it or not, but Unimus 2.0, I can't remember if we talked about it last week, but Unimus 2.0 is officially released, and you guys had a week of rest, right, after that?
We haven't talked about it because it was released last Thursday, and yeah, finally. So yeah, Unimus 2.0 is out. It's been going quite well, luckily, so there is no major showstopper bugs or issues that we are tracking right now. There is a few issues which we are tracking with select, a couple of customers and very special edge cases, but yeah, our entire company was, just taking it easy this week after, basically having a development crunch for the last 3 months. To get 2.0 into a state where all the bugs were fixed, and it was, in a state where we were comfortable enough releasing it to the public, and then, making sure that nothing would break and it would hold up to our software quality standards. And it's a huge release. It's been 7 months in the making. There are 20 new features, and there is 50 fixes for bugs and issues and UI improvements, UX improvements, and I'm sure there will be a link to the release overview in the note. It makes Unimus into a entirely, I would want to say it opens up entirely new use cases, because it really does. It's a huge release with many things in it, and yeah.
That's cool. I can't wait to get it installed and start flexing its muscles. I'm still on a slightly older version. You would be very ashamed of me, Thomas. So, but saying that, I saw Ollie made a cool little Ansible playbook that goes out and updates your Unimus server for you. So I can just be lazy and use the work that some other schmuck took the time to put together. So I appreciate that. That's cool, man. Let's see. What else?
Just a quick note. Somehow TriCast shit the bed.
Such is life. Well, everybody listening is gonna get good audio up until the point it stops, and then you're gonna switch over to Skype audio, so they can have good audio most of the way, and then it'll just be a little dirty right at the end. So such is life.
Yeah, I do want to make a small correction. I noticed in some of the information I received, the new N-Ray 60 gigahertz radio, it does actually have a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port. It's just not implemented yet in the RouterOS software. So potentially that opens up for a firmware upgrade in the future that will allow you to pass more than a gig over those radios, because they do connect at 2.5 gig at the moment.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, so we are at an hour 45. I wanted to close it out with some thoughts I've been accumulating, and tell you guys a little story and see what other stories you have. Is that I was talking to a friend of mine one time, and she's a research lecturer at A&M, the local college here or whatever. And she was talking about, at some point or another, we were talking about flashbulb memories. It's the idea of something traumatic or something big happens, and you have this memory, they call it a flashbulb memory, where you kind of remember where you were, what you were doing, what was going on at the time when stuff like that happened. And for me, the flashbulb memory that I have is from 9/11. I remember when that happened, exactly where I was. I was listening to the radio VJs on the rock station talking about weird stuff going on. But I was thinking about this COVID stuff. It's weird because this is, it's a really big thing in my kids' lives, right? They're 11 and 15 now. I've got a 15-year-old, bro. That's crazy. And my 11-year-old's about to be a 12-year-old. It's nutty. Anyway, I was thinking about, how's this going to stick in their memory, right? Because it's not like one quick traumatic event. It's like this slow burn sort of thing. And I was just thinking, what are they going to remember? And I was having this discussion with my wife, and then the very next day had this little situation, and I said, you know what? I know what I'm going to remember. And it was, I got up like any other morning, followed my normal routine, and so I go into the kitchen, I take one of my Nexium, I drink some lemon juice now. That's my first thing I do in the morning, because after you have a kidney stone, they say you should probably get a little citrus acid into your system, just, as a precaution. So I do that. I grab a couple boiled eggs, and I'm coming around the kitchen counter to go to my office, and I see a plastic Ziploc bag sitting on the counter, and I think, well, that looks weird. I look a little closer, and I go, that's a bag of pubes. And I go, well, I guess I'm going to go to my office now. So I walk to my office because I know I've got a 15-year-old kid. He's hitting puberty. And I guess he decided, he had to do a little manscaping. And so I'm in my office and I have my door open. And like 20, 30 minutes later, I hear my wife go in there. And I had said something. She had heard me say that or whatever. And she goes, oh, it is a bag of pubes. And I was like, yeah. So later my kid got up.
If someone else
I said, so a couple of questions. One is, it's, why did you put your pubes in a Ziploc bag, and why did you put it on the kitchen table, the counter? And he said, well, I was shaving, I was trimming things, and I didn't want to make a mess, so I got a Ziploc bag to collect it all into. And he was like, and then I was going to throw it away, and I got distracted halfway to the kitchen, and I accidentally left it on the kitchen counter. And I was like, so many questions, so many things you could have done differently about this. It's let's do an after.
Please replay this to his 21st birthday.
Let's do an after action report on this. Let's roll back. Let's look at things we did good, things we could have done better on.
So it's a post-mortem, right?
Yeah. I said, why didn't you just shave over the toilet and then flush? And he goes, I don't know, because I didn't think of it. I was like, all right then. I was like, next time, just don't bring that into the kitchen. And kids are often the best and also the worst simultaneously. I guess it's bittersweet, or I don't know. I don't know how you categorize it. I love it. I love the complete insanity of children. But that's, in 20 years, when I look back at all this COVID bullshit, that's what I want to remember. I want to remember a bag of pubes on the countertop. And that's kind of my mantra. That's become my mantra for all of this. You know what? It's like, we're going to make it out. Things are getting weird now. Try and pull what you can out of this in some positive light, because we're survivors, right? We're humans. We always somehow find a way to make it out. And man, life is so much easier when I can do it with a smile on my face, because I really have. There's been a couple of moments where I just want to scream. I don't know what it is. It's just there's some kind of mental shift I've had trouble making a couple of times, where I feel like a caged animal trapped. And it's little things like that are, believe it or not, really helping me cope with everything and make it through. So I was just curious, when you guys look back in 20 years on this.
I don't think any of us can top that.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to. I was just thinking, when you look back in 20 years, what do you think it is you're going to remember? Because honestly, I have a horrible memory. I really do. It's the worst. But I guarantee I'm going to remember that. I'm just curious. What do you think you guys are? Andrew almost blew himself up. I know that maybe that's one of his memories that he's gonna maintain. I'm just curious. What do you guys like? Have you really even thought about it? We're still in the middle of it, right? It's like, how do you get any perspective on something you're still in the middle of? But I'm just curious if you guys thought about it.
For myself, I said this before, not a lot of my personal life has particularly significantly changed at all. I mean, I'm still working 10, 12-hour days. I'm still sitting in front of a computer, on the phone, emailing, and like the only minor thing different is that I have to wear an N95 mask if on the rare occasion maybe once every 1 or 2 weeks I go to a customer's house. Beyond that, I climb towers. I sit in behind a desk. So for me, COVID may not be very well be very memorable to me personally, other than like the huge cultural things that are happening. And the memes. Oh my God, some of the memes have been glorious. People obviously have a boatload of time in front of themselves, and they are making use of it. But yeah, honestly, there's very little difference between my life in January and my life the last 2 months, all things considered. And I live out in the middle of nowhere, and nobody wears a mask anyways. So, yeah. To quote one of the guys who I know who like meets, he's insurance stuff, and he meets with people all the time, and he's like, nobody out here gives a crap. I was like, oh, well, you're right. All right, that's so true. It's like outside of Denver, outside of Boulder, nobody cares. And which is true. Like, to be honest, most people's lives out here, like, you may come within 10 feet of 5-10 people in a day if it's really busy and you're going around to a lot of different stuff. But otherwise, yeah. We already practice social isolation out here on the Eastern Plains. You all are just plebeians walking into our world.
So you're saying you were born into it?
I was born in this, the darkness. You merely, I can't even remember Bane's lines. Adopted it, yeah. Yes.
Well, what do you foreign folks think you're gonna recall from all of this stuff?
I'll go first. Oh yeah, definitely. So Greg mentioned I nearly blew myself up. We had a bit of relaxing of the social distancing stuff. We were allowed to have a couple of people around, and sort of we hadn't had anyone around to our place for like almost 2 months. And we had a few friends around just to have do like a little Korean barbecue cookout in our backyard. And because it's getting real cold here at the moment, I had a little fire pit and everything there as well. And I happened to have one of these old butane lunchbox cookers, I think they call them. And we're like, yeah, we'll use this, put the cast iron pan on it, which extends a little bit over the edge of the cooker area, which anyone who is familiar with these cookers probably knows where this is going. That heated up the area that the butane canister sits in, and the whole thing exploded. The cast iron pan stayed exactly where it was. It went up and straight back down. The cooker, however, broke into about 4 pieces and flew in different directions, and everyone sitting around it was like, what the fuck? It blew off one of the girls' beanies. Like, no one was actually, the guys were hit by the pieces but not injured by them, so no one was sort of cut or anything like that. But yeah, so I've got this nice picture of this. Basically, they're made cheaply. It's designed to be a cheap cooker, but the whole thing sort of just peeled open, and bits have just sort of flown off. And yeah, that was we were very lucky. No one got injured, and we resorted to just sticking with the electric cooker that we had there.
Golly.
So yeah, it's like, yep, we're all celebrating being able to actually see each other again a little bit, and yeah, the night went off with a bang.
Wow, oh my God. Ugh, you're the worst.
I would have been upset if he didn't end like that.
Oh my God. Well, anybody else anything to contribute, or what's the story here? Is it still too soon?
No. Life's the same here.
All right then. Let's see. I guess time to stick a fork in it. It's 8:15, and Master Pancake is doing Lord of the Rings: Return of the Ring, and I have seen this one. They started. It's probably just now starting. This one they make Gandalf a pedophile, and all of the hobbits are being taken advantage of. So it's quite amusing. I'm just. Thomas, I could eat on that.
Is that why
face
it's
you're
called
making
Lord
for
of
a
the
week
Ring?
is amazing. Tolkien's rolling in his grave.
Yeah. Yeah, he
I am
would
rolling
be.
in my chair.
Well, thank you guys. You guys are one of the big parts that keep me sane, each and every one of you. So thank you guys for coming on here. Andrew, it's always great to see you, brother. I miss your stupid face. Not your stupid jokes, though. Just your stupid face. So all of you listeners, please keep the comments, questions coming. Please keep contributing. If you want to jump into our Slack and get crazy, if you've got your own bag of pubes story, I'd love to hear it. Go to patreon.com/brotherswisp, toss us a couple of bones, and get in the Slack and have a good time. And again, thanks everybody. Thank you, Four Faces, for joining me, and we'll talk to you next time.
Shooting up the web in neighborhoods, net surfing. We got horrible jokes, we're loud and annoying, but we're informative facts, we're not disappointing. Just give us a listen, cause fun is the mission. I'm telling you, you don't know what you are missing. Ideas and some good comedy given. If you missed the show already, don't worry, you're forgiven.